Today you'll see a beautiful pair of woven pull-up pants. Amazing, the fabric is everything. And the pattern is free for now. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and today I have a pattern to share with you that is free for now. This is from Seamwork. Found out about this pattern a couple weeks ago and I really wanted to make it up. Downloaded it for free. As I checked this morning, it's still free. Grab it now before it goes back to being full price. Now I have sewn several Seamwork patterns. I don't have a membership, but you can buy patterns individually and I like that because you can choose what you like. This one's perfect. There are features here that are super classic and I have quite a few fabrics that are sort of set aside for these types of pants. Now the Joss pants are a straight leg, wide leg pant, flowy leg, I would say. It's elasticated at the waist. There's a curved waistband. There's 2 layers there. The waistband has a few more steps than other simple pants I've made, but it turns out beautiful. There's an outer layer and an inner layer, slightly curved, 1-inch elastic in there, so it's not a super wide elasticated waistband. It's got a nice amount of ease. There are patch pockets on the front leg. They look like rectangles, but they are shaped to follow the shape of the side seam, so I really like how thoughtful those pockets are. Then you go down, they're meant to be as designed above the ankle-ish, 24.5-inch inseam for all the sizes. I know I could rock that look with my height, but I'd rather just keep it simple and make things full length so I don't have to think about the styling that much. So I always knew mine were going to be full length and I was going to be adding length so that they would not be cropped. That's personal preference, of course. You can make them cropped or whatever. I think length is always something that you can easily adjust. It's a pretty easy sew and I was very, very hopeful that these were going to be amazing. You need woven fabrics for this one, medium weight, lightweight fabrics. I would say drape is desired, at least for me it is when there's an elasticated waistband and a wide leg pant. I always want there to be some drape there, but that is very personal. So I would go with medium weight fabrics like rayon twill, rayon crepe, tencel twill. Even if I wanted a warmer pair, I would do a wool crepe that is drapey as well. Another fabric that's always great is rayon linen blend. Usually when there's more rayon than linen, there's going to be more drape, like 70% rayon, 30% linen. That is amazing. There's another type of fabric I use that's 87% rayon, 13% linen. It's not too lightweight. It's got a beautiful texture, lovely prints. So that would be amazing. Those would be my first choices. Now, I know some people don't mind having 100% linen, which is more structured. Some types of cotton twill, even denim. I know some people would like this style of pant there, but then the legs would just look wider. They would just fall away from the body and not sit closer to you. So it's all personal preference in the end. Have a think about what you would like. Sometimes I see comments online about people being really disappointed of how something turned out. And I know the reason. It's the fabric choice. You know, you have a certain image in your head and then you try to replicate that, but sometimes the fabric doesn't match. And I've seen comments along the lines of it doesn't drape when they've used quilting cotton. I always see those comments and think that's why I discuss fabric so much here, because I want you to think about the fabric a little bit more. Anything that I mention is structured, even though it might be super lightweight, it doesn't drape, it's going to hang differently, it's going to look differently, and it might differ to the vision that you have in your head. So when I say drape is desirable here, I'm looking for drapey fabrics, especially when something's meant to be nice and flowy and has a little extra volume at the waist with that elastic. I want that fabric to be drapey. And that's why in this case, I chose a rayon crepe fabric. Amazing. It's got vertical features, but they're not stripes, you'll see. Amazing. I was always sure it was going to turn out exactly like I imagined. Other than the fabric, the only other notion you need are a little bit of fusible interfacing for the waistband and 1-inch elastic. Sizing goes from 0 to 26 US, but it's separated into 2 drafts, one from 0 to 16, the other from 18 to 26, which would be the curvy. They're not exactly the same. I looked at all the finished garment measurements. I plotted my measurements down there. I'm a size 14 for Seamwork at the moment. And for size 14, I get about 4.5 inches of positive ease at the hips. I know I prefer a little bit less. I think a little bit less looks better on me. So I decided to size down one size only to a size 12. I'm sure I can still pull up the waist area over my hips because you need to be careful with that. Sometimes you size down too much, but then the waist has to fit over your hips. In my case, I can do that perfectly, just slide them up. And I see this as a positive because I'm going to end up with less bulk around the waist. So I'm very happy I sized down. Fitting adjustments, I always know there is going to be something. You know, we're all very different here. So I always draw in my seam allowances and measure the front rise, the back rise separately. I pin on the waistband to include that in the total measurement. And I figured out that the back was perfect. I didn't need to make any changes to the back rise. But I found the front rise way too high. It was going to end up under my bra. It was just too much. And so I made an adjustment that is more than what I usually do. I needed to shorten at the center, only on the front rise by 2 inches, leaving the side seams the same. I thought if I just do one line, it's going to warp the curve too much. So I did 2 lines. You can see on this diagram here, I did 2 lines cut across, little pivot point on the side seam so it doesn't alter the side seam length. And then I overlapped by 1 inch each. And then I straightened out the front crotch because when you do this adjustment, it ends up turning a little curved. I just straightened that out because you always want that seam at the front crotch to be nice and straight. So that's what I did there. Perfect. It turned out well in the end. And the pattern is drafted for a height of 5'8". Just take that into account. Although I did mention that 24.5-inch inseam. You need to know that the crotch on these hang a little lower, and it's got to do with the style of the pants because they are wider leg, elasticized. You don't want that crotch to be super fitted like you want in jeans, where it has to cup your bottom and be super fitted all the way around the crotch. This is not the case here. So if you think you might need a lot more inseam to add a lot more length, if you want full length, you might need a little less. Now, down lower, there's a shortened and lengthened line where I added 5 inches to the length. I probably could have gotten away with just adding 4. Remember, the crotch sits a little lower here. So it's perfect. I can wear it with sneakers. I can wear it with heels. It turned out great. I added 5, but I think 4 would have been okay as well. I'm going to show you the sewing, focusing on the patch pockets. Look, to be honest, I would have skipped the patch pockets because this is a print. I don't think they're going to be that noticeable, but I wanted to include it in the sewing segment and I had enough fabric, so there was no excuses. I did the pockets, so you can see how those are done. Super, super easy. General construction, I'm sewing the pants, and the general way you put the pants together totally different to the instructions. But it's a totally valid way. You know, each designer has their own preferred way. The way in the instructions is totally valid as well. But I like sewing the crotch at the end. So you'll see how I'm doing mine. It's super easy. Then I'm going to show you this curved waistband that has an elastic inside. These are the waistband pieces of the Just pants. You can see that they're slightly curved. One is interfaced, one isn't. So I have 2 layers of fabric. The layer underneath is not interfaced, and this one already is interfaced. I'm doing the block fusing, and that's how I'm going to cut them out. I feel like a broken record, but this is the best way to keep your facings in the same size and shape that the original pattern piece has. The other thing I do differently is not cut them on the fold. You can see the pattern piece just goes to there. I just use random paper that I have left over and I just replicate it and I create one full piece that I can cut out open and flat. That also reduces the human error of the fold that you get there. Plus with block fusing, I wouldn't want to put interfaced fabric on the fold. That just creates bulk there on the fold area. So little things like this do make a difference in the end. The pieces match and you have less discrepancy. Now these pieces are very similar to each other, but they do have little marks on them, single notches and double notches. So make sure you mark that so you don't get confused later to which side goes in the front, which side goes in the back, because the shapes are very, very similar. These are the pocket pieces. They're just patch pockets, and I'm working with a Rayon crepe. It's not too light, but it's still got lots of drape. They could turn out really floppy. So I have interfaced the top area here, about 1.5 inches. This is the section that we're going to fold and top stitch on the top. So I want that to be a little more stable. So that's something extra that I've done that doesn't appear in the pattern. I do modify things according to my fabric choice. So if I was working with something heavier, I probably wouldn't need to do that. But I think for most pockets, you do benefit from interfacing the top part. It just looks neater in the end. Here are the pattern pieces for the Just pants. There's not many pattern pieces at all. The legs look short here because I've got them folded. Otherwise, they wouldn't fit the table, but they are very much longer than this. These are the patch pockets that go on the front. Now I've interfaced the top as you saw. The side that's going to go into the side seam has a little bit of a curve. So make sure you note the difference. It's not a rectangle. These are the waistband pieces. They're both curved. There's 2 layers. Here are the layers for the back and for the front. So there's one interfaced, one non-interfaced. Front leg over here, back leg over there. Should be very simple to put together. The Joss pants are going to have a waistband sewn on top of the waistline and slightly curved fabric that can tend to stretch out, not too tightly woven. So I'm going to stay stitch the waist. This is actually in the instructions, which is really appreciated. So I'm doing this at 1/2 inch. Later when we sew the waistband on, it'll be sewn at 5/8 of an inch. So it's the perfect distance. Regular stitch length, just doing all the waistlines. Just because it's easier to do now and it's the way that I like to sew things, I'm just going to go ahead and serge edges, side seams, inseams, even the bottom, the hem area, because I'm going to be folding that up once. It's just easier to get it done and then I can just forget about the edges because they've already been done. It's a pretty mindless task over here. I'm trying not to trim away anything so I can keep the seam allowances for later intact. There's 4 of these legs to do. This is the first one. I'll just repeat the same for the other 3 legs. These are the pockets. This fabric crumples like no tomorrow. That's rayon for you. Anyway, I have done some guide stitches here to help me press. Now on one of these ends that's a little straighter, you're going to find a dot here and a dot down there. This is a larger dot. It just means it's the top of the pocket and a smaller dot on the pattern piece. So along this edge, I've done a guide stitch at 5/8 and along the bottom right here. So just these are mirrored. This is going to be in the side seam, so I haven't done a guide stitch there. I'm also going to fold this down only once. So in the pattern, it says fold by 1/4 inch and then fold by 1 inch. But for rayon, I find that bulky, so I'm just going to fold it once by 1 1/4 inches. This is what I've put on my bobbin, pink thread, so I can see what I'm doing when I go ahead and press. So I'm just going to head over to the iron and get this all pressed. And then there's a mark on the front leg of where these go, and I'm going to just pin and base that on. Here's one of the pockets all pressed. Now I'm just going to top stitch along the top. I'm going to top stitch 1 inch away from the edge. That means I'm catching it from the other side. In the end, the pocket is going to end up the same size as the original one. It's just that I'm doing a single fold on the top instead of 2. This is one of the front legs. Here is the front crotch. And from the waist down a couple of inches and from the center, you see on the pattern there's a dot, and that's the mark for this corner of the pocket. So that is the only reference you have. So I aligned the rest over here, aligned it along the hip, and I didn't try to pattern match this. There is my patch pocket. It's been hand basted right there. And now I'm going to top stitch in place. It's only 2 sections that you top stitch, this one and this one. This section is going to be caught within the side seam right there. This is another presser foot. This has an L on it. It's also a type of blind hem presser foot, but different. When you move this, it moves this edge in or out, so you can actually get whatever seam allowance you want, and it's really helpful. I've set it here to about 1/8 of an inch. There's many ways to sew simple pants like these. These are pull-up elasticized waist. You can sew the crotch seams first and then the side seams and the inseams, whatnot. That's how the instructions have it. But I'm just doing one leg separately and then the other leg separately. So I'm going to sew inseams and side seams, get them pressed open. And then I turn one leg inside out and just put it inside the other, and then I sew the crotch at the end. That's how I prefer to sew my pants. Very simple, straight seams. I'm going to get them sewn off camera, press the seams open, and then I'll just be back to join them. I've sewn the seams, pressed them. I've turned one of the legs right sides out, the other one's wrong sides out, and then you just take this one that's right sides out and put it inside the other leg, uniting the crotch area. So the inseams are going to match right here. Once this leg is in, it's going to be right sides together. Okay, the inseams are matching here, and now we have this U type of seam to pin and sew and serge. So one's the front, one's the back, but it's all one continuous seam, and this is my preferred way of sewing pants.
seam allowance for the Joss pants is 5/8 of an inch, so I'm using that to sew the crotch. But then when I serge, I'm going to trim it down small. I think that's way too much. I've been working on the waistband unit right here. I have some basic steps done, like sewing the side seams. This is the interfaced waistband that I have here on the top, and I've decided to do my guide stitch from this interfaced layer, 1/2 inch in. There's the pink thread right there. I've also hand basted it to keep it in place. I'm going to remove that guide stitch. And then on the inside, I have my non-interfaced waistband. They are the same. You just have to match the back with the back, the front with the front, and then we're going to sew them all around the top. Now this bottom edge that's here on the non-interfaced waistband, that's the one I'm going to sew to the pants. It's sort of in reverse to what you see in the instructions, because in the instructions you have the non-interface layer folded up and you sew the interface layer to the pants. But I do this all the time. It's just that I end up with the top stitching later on the front of the pants where I want it to be neat. So I'm sewing these two layers together, right sides together, 5/8 seam allowance like everywhere else. Whenever you're sewing two layers where one is interfaced and one isn't, it's always best to have the interface layer on the top touching the presser foot because it's the most stable area, and leave the most unstable area at the bottom touching the feed dogs. Afterwards, I am going to trim this snip because it is slightly curved as well. Now we need to understitch. Remember, the non-interfaced waistband is the one that's on the inside, so the seam allowance has to be tucked in towards the non-interface layer. So from the wrong side, it should look like this. This should be extended that way, towards the non-interface side. I've been to the iron and pressed my waistband unit like this. I'm going to open it up. I have the non-interface side here, and this is going to be right side to wrong side of the pants. So both the waistband here and the pants are wrong sides up. And for the back, we have double notches. This is going to be the center back, and there's two little marks there that are going to match the waist. So this should match 1 to 1. I'm going to go ahead and pin this all the way around, matching up the side seams as well. And then we're going to get this seam sewn at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I know it looks totally wrong, and the tutorial says to sew it right sides together and you would be sewing the interfaced one. But I do my method reversed, and it's just easier because you're going to see that when I flip this forward, the inside seam is already sewn. You don't have to worry. Let's pretend that the seam is sewn. We're going to bring this over to the right side over here, cover the seam, and then top stitch there on the right side of the pants. You can do your edge stitching super neatly. Now I'm trimming that seam allowance again. It's just too much. After trimming it, I'm going to go to the iron and press that seam allowance up towards the waistband, and then just bring the waistband forward. We're on the right side of the pants here. We're going to cover that seam. I'm going to hand baste it down. Around the back, I'm going to leave a gap about 2 inches so I can thread the elastic through, and then I'm going to top stitch. I've hand basted my waistband in place. Now I'm using my presser foot to sew on the edge really neatly. I'm leaving a little gap there. And that's basically it. I'm just going to put my 1 inch elastic there. I know the length I need for it to be comfortable to my waist. I might top stitch down the elastic later, just depends on how sturdy I feel it's going to behave. It's going to start rolling around. And then I have to do the hem. There's a little gap from where I'm going to put the elastic through there. Once it's in, then I'm just going to top stitch it close there. Very neatly. Looks neat from the inside. You don't have to worry about not catching anything because it's already sewn. And I think doing it reversed ends up easier in the end.
If you're loving the sewing content and it's really helping you in your sewing at home, Make sure to like this video, and every single video you watch here. It makes a huge difference in the way that YouTube shares my content. Hopefully more people that love to sew can find me over here. I know people ask, so I'll just tell you, this is a Hello Gorgeous top from Pattern Emporium. I made it as a sweater with a sweater knit. Made it last week. It's beautiful. I'm still in winter over here, mild winter, so this is perfect. It's got lovely puff sleeves over here, nice little extension, sort of squarish rounded neckline is beautiful, and it's an amazing sweater. I have a video about it that I shared last week if you missed out, so check it out. These are my Joss pants. This fabric is so nice. I love the print here that it goes down vertical. I would have not liked it if it was like this, and if the fabric was like this, I would have probably cut it on the cross grain so that it ended up like this. So don't think it's wrong to cut on the cross grain for aesthetic reasons. Just make sure you wash your fabric twice to avoid extra shrinking and you'll be okay. I've got a whole video on cutting on the cross grain. Thankfully, in this case, it wasn't necessary, but I would have totally done it to end up with this if the fabric had come like that. So it's beautiful. Here are the patch pockets. You can barely see them. There was no point in trying to match anything because the print is not repetitive or anything. So I just sewed them on as they turned out. It's top stitch there with my presser foot right there. I didn't really make any bar tags or reinforce this corner like you see in the instructions because I'm never going to put my hands or anything in these pockets. They are decorative. So I just left it with a regular seam. I know I'm not going to have a problem there. This is the curved waistband. You see I like to sew it on the reverse. It catches everything on the inside. When you top stitch, you end up with that little seam on the inside, but you don't have to worry about not catching this, which is very common with a traditional method. So that's why I do it like that. At the back, there's nothing. Now, it doesn't bother me that there's nothing on the back because it's a print. If I'd made this in a solid, it would bother me that there's no pockets on the back. I probably would have taken a patch pocket from another pattern and just plopped it on there because I feel like solid fabrics deserve patch pockets on the back. It just looks so much better. So this one doesn't have it, the pattern doesn't have it, but it would be so easy for you to grab some if you wanted to make this in a solid. At least that's what I would do. Super easy, big hem allowance. I love that. When you have lighter fabrics, I think you need a larger hem allowance so that the weight of the hem just makes the pants fall nicer. And they turned out amazing. I had a really nice time sewing these, easing my way back into sewing at home, my sewing room, everything here. So yeah, let's see this one styled a few ways. Summary styling. These are my Joss pants from Seamwork patterns. The pattern is free at the moment, but this could change. So I suggest you grab it while it's free. I made a size 12, which is actually one size down from the size I should have made. I should have made a 14. But I was comfortable with a little bit less positive ease here. I can still pull these up over my hips, no problem. Super comfortable wide leg pants, elasticized waistband. These are Rayon crepe with a lovely print. I love the vertical features here, although they're not exactly stripes. I love the look and the fit is so comfortable. I've got a cami tucked in, which is not how I would usually wear it. I just want you to see the pants, but then I'll put something on top. Here is the elasticated waistband. There is a 1-inch elastic in there. It's a curved waistband. Got an outer layer that's interfaced. The inner is not interfaced. It's very comfortable. Now rise, I made no change to the back rise. So that's the original pant, but the front was gonna be way too long. So I shortened it on the center front by 2 inches, leaving the sides the same. And you can see it's at my waist. Otherwise this would have been like up here, which is not a look I'm going for. Pockets are discreet, it's a print, you can't see them. I have about 2.5 inches of ease around the hips, which is what I prefer, rather than having 4.5, which is what I would have had if I'd made the size I had to make, which was a 14. Now this is how I would prefer to wear these wide leg pants, with the cami tucked in so you could see the waist and the waistband, but with a little topper, linen topper. It's really lovely and I think this completes the look and it's how I would actually wear this. Now these pants are designed to be cropped sort of above the ankle, and that is not a look I'm going for. It's a straight leg pant, you can easily add length there. There is a short and a lengthened line there. So the original inseam here was for 24.5 inches. I added 5.5 inches to the inseam so that's full length and I can wear it with heels, and I'm much more comfortable with full length pants than with ankle ones. That's always personal preference. I love how they turned out. It's a very well made pattern, great instructions. I suggest you grab it while it's free for now. Totally worth your time, and I love how they turned out. It's another sporty look. I've got sneakers. They have about an 1.5-inch sole, rubber sole, so they're not flat, so my pants aren't scraping the floor, I suppose. I've got a really cute top on that's slightly shorter. It's got a casing at the waist, and I've tucked it in underneath so it sits a little shorter, just to not interfere with the volume of the legs of the pants. I think this looks nice and balanced. And because the pants are black and white, I can wear any colorful top and it'll always look great together. Here I've got my Joss pants paired with my Tambour top from Love Notions, broderie anglaise, slightly boxier. I'm going to do a little half tuck. Some people say that that's not in anymore, but I do not care. It just suits my shape better. And I don't really care about what fashion people say sometimes, as long as I feel that I look better. And for my height, my body type, I'm pretty sure that it looks better that I highlight my waist somehow, especially when these pants are wider and the top is a little boxy. I saw a lot of tops made in prints, and when I do have my solid ones, I'm always looking for the printed pants, especially the black and white ones, because I know it's going to go together really well like this. And red, black and white, it's one of my favorite color combos. This is my Dana point top from Each to Stitch paired with the Joss pants, and it's the perfect silhouette. It's a top that's a little longer, but it's the perfect silhouette because it's got tucks at the waist, front and back. So it really does give you that shape. You know, the waistband underneath from the Joss pants is not too bulky because I sized down. I don't have that much fabric and elastic under there. It doesn't create bulk under the tucks of the waist of this top. So I love it. I don't feel the need to tuck in or do anything to highlight my shape here because the top does it all. And the pants are lovely underneath. This is green, black and white. Of course, it's going to go together. Totally recommend. I think it's a great pattern. If you still haven't got it, get it now while it's free because it might not be free in a little while. It's free at the moment where I publish the video because I've had people complaining months or years later after some of these videos. I'm like, it was free back then. So don't miss out. I highly recommend Seamwork, amazing pattern company, great value, really great quality. The next episode you'll see from me is a fabric episode I've been preparing for quite a while and I'm really excited to share. You also see a new make there, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on all the helpful content here all about sewing at Lifting Pins and Needles. See you then. Bye.